Hello and welcome to the Focus Weekly session whereby we are going to discuss important topics which have come in newspapers and magazines in the last week from the geography and environment section. As you can see on the screen, the topic list is shown. So we are going to discuss the topics. First will be the Aravalli Safari Park project. Then we have Faecel bacteria in Mahakumbh, the report which made the headlines, and then the African cheetahs and issues, and then the changes in the sea levels. So these topics will be dealt from the prelims as well as from the mains perspective, right? Aravalli Safari Park project finds its relevance when it comes to the current affairs and the important location-based question. So we shall be discussing about this project as well as key related information of the Aravalli mountains as such, so that the knowledge from the current affairs as well as static part is covered. The second part is fecal bacteria in Mahakumbh. So, because we know that Mahakumbh was, and it is still going on, I guess. So, because of that, the Central Pollution Control Board came up with a report which said that the water at the Prague, that is the confluence of Ganga and Yamuna, was not fit for bathing, and leave aside the drinking. And there was a lot of controversy over that, so it somehow got missed in the national media. But yes, we have to cover from the science and the environment section, that is fecal bacteria. Then the next topic will be African cheetahs and issues related to it. Okay, so hereby we'll be discussing about the key facts about the cheetahs and the issues related to the reintroduction project, and we'll see that how these cheetahs are different from the leopards. Last is the changes in the sea level. This topic finds its relevance in General Studies paper 3, paper 1, where it is written the changes in the geophysical phenomena, especially the ice cover. So in that portion this topic falls. Okay, without wasting much time, let us begin with our discussion. So first topic is in relation to the Aravalli Safari Park project. So the context is that recently the Haryana state government's ambitious Aravalli Safari project is envisaged, and this is envisaged to be the world's largest project of its kind. Okay, so this is an important key fact. If it comes on the ground, then it will be the world's largest safari park. But this project is getting facing a lot of criticisms, right? So in this relation, what are the key facts related to it? So it is a project by the Haryana government and not the Rajasthan government. So Haryana state government is involved. Okay. Second is it is envisaged to be the world's largest safari project. But then yes, there are certain concerns. First of all, we all know that Aravallis lies in the eco-sensitive areas. Okay, especially the southern part of Aravallis where we have Mount Abu Hills, we have Guru Shikhar Peak. That area basically is ecologically sensitive area, and that area is already marred with the rampant tourism. Now if we are going to promote such type of projects, obviously it is going to attract further tourists, right? So the experts believe that this project is not aimed at preserving the biodiversity, rather it is aimed at enhancing the tourism of that area. Okay, so obviously rampant tourism in ecologically sensitive area is not a good thing. Second, when we talk about the Haryana state, we know that the state lies in the semi-arid climatic zone. So if it is a semi-arid climatic zone, we already know that there we do not have much trees. So if we are going for the construction of this project, so obviously large scale deforestation will take place. Haryana itself is having lesser number of trees. Further deforestation is going to destabilize the ecosystem as well as biodiversity of the state, right? And the third aspect is related to the artificial park. When we talk about the wildlife conservation, in general, we talk about ex situ mode of conservation as well as in situ mode of conservation. So, in situ mode of conservation means that conserving the wildlife species on the site itself. So, you are not making some artificial arrangements to create the wildlife species. If these are conserved on the site itself, for example, when we go for national parks, so national parks are what? National parks are the forest areas where you are having the wildlife species. You are making the laws, you are delineating the boundary, you are controlling, you are regulating the human activities. But as far as the overall ecosystem is concerned, it is natural. Therefore, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves are the example of in situ national park. When we talk about the safari parks, when we talk about the zoological gardens or zoos, so these are artificial structures, right? So within the Aravallis, this project is obviously is going to be created by humans. It is an ex situ mode of conservation. So experts have questioned this logic of this artificial park, that why are we going for the ex situ mode of conservation within the ecological, naturally ecological area? Why aren't we going for the in situ mode of conservation? Okay, so this is another issue. So the point is that these are the certain concerns which are related with this particular project. Okay, from the examinations perspective, I don't think that this project as such is important, because still a lot of discussions and negotiations is going on. More important is the key facts related to the Aravalli Mountains. We all know that here we are having the Aravallis. Can you think about some significance of the Aravallis in terms of monsoon distribution in India? This we know, that when the southwestern branch comes, and because of the parallel orientation of Aravallis to the southwestern branch of the monsoon, this Rajasthan, the western portion especially, becomes a desert area. One of the reasons responsible for the formation of Thar Desert is the rainfall deficit, which in turn is an outcome of the orientation of Aravallis. But this Aravallis is not having is does not have only the significance in terms of monsoon distribution. It also has a huge significance when it comes to the climatic subdivisions of Rajasthan as a whole. It also has a huge significance when it comes to the water resources, because few of the important rivers originate from Aravallis. They also have the significance in terms of natural resources, because these Aravallis are also home to some of the important natural resources, like you get copper, you get iron, you get asbestos, you get phosphate, you get gypsum, right? So a lot of resources are also there. But yes, metallic resources are relatively less, non-metallic resources are more. So in this sense, we shall be looking at some of the key facts. First is that we know that Aravalli Mountains are the one of the oldest fold mountain ranges of the world. So they are old fold mountains. Because of this folding and the localized faults, recently there were certain earthquakes in Delhi having epicenter near Dhola region. So there also the reports came that why this epicenter has developed in Delhi, because generally the earthquakes which are experienced by Delhi and this northern belt region, they generally have their epicenter in Afghanistan, Pakistan or in Nepal. But very rare earthquakes are there which are having the local epicenter. So the reason is the presence of the folds as well as localized fractures in the Aravalli zone, right? Starts near Delhi. So this is also an important point. Aravallis are not restricted only to the state of Rajasthan. Yes, majority portion is in Rajasthan, but it starts from Delhi Ridge. Those who have visited Delhi or live in Delhi, they must have seen the Raisena Hills. So when you go towards the President House, there is an upland. In a lot of places in Delhi, you see the upslopes are there. So those are basically the remnants of the Aravallis itself. So it starts from the Delhi Ridge, it passes through southern Haryana. This is also important state. And obviously we know Rajasthan, and that it ends in Gujarat. So it does not end in Rajasthan. It goes and it moves up to some portion in Gujarat, right? This range gives rise to several important rivers also. The most important rivers are Banas as well as Luni. Okay. Yes, we agree that the rivers, for example, when we talk about Luni, so Luni is obviously one, a seasonal river, and second, it is having an inland drainage because it ends somewhere near the run of Kutch. River Luni does not enter into the Arabian Sea, it ends in run of Kutch. So it is having an inland drainage, which is also known as what? That they have ephemeral, sorry, ephemeral river system. Okay, so ephemeral river system basically means that they are temporary rivers. They are having inland drainage and they are seasonal in nature. They only have the discharge during because of the rainfall. nothing else, because obviously here we are not having glaciers to permanently feed these rivers, right? And Banas is another important river. These Aravallis also form an important role of aquifers because there are a lot of faults and fractures, and the rocks of these Aravallis are weathered, which because of which there is porosity and the water enters into the rocks, and because of the permeability, the water easily flows also. So in this entire region of Rajasthan, this Aravalli region is the only region where you can get some of the groundwater. Obviously, you are not going to get groundwater in the western section of Rajasthan where you are having desert, because their evaporation is more than precipitation, right? But in this portion, you have aquifers, you have rivers. More importantly, the southern portion of the Aravallis, where you have Abu Hills and you have Mount Abu and Guru Shikhar. So this area is relatively moist and humid also. So in the southern section of Aravallis, you will find a lot of forests and hill stations, right? When we talk about the natural resources, so it has the natural resources like rock phosphate, lead, zinc, silver, talc, pyrophyllite, asbestos. It has gypsum. It has the copper. Khetri mines are famous, right? Rajpur Dariba mines are known for the manganese and iron deposits. So these are some of the important natural resources of Aravallis. Okay. So from the examination's perspective, this information about Aravalli range is relatively more important compared to the Safari project. However, we have done the Safari project also, if the question comes at all, right? Moving to the next topic. Again, the topic is in relation to the river pollution at the Mahakumbh. Okay. So we know that around 50 crores, the data suggests that around 50 crores of people have taken a holy dip in the Mahakumbh. And we have seen all the issues related to it, as well as the faith of the people in that particular area from the religious and cultural perspective. But in this sense, recently there was a report which was given by Central Pollution Control Board, and it was submitted in front of NGT, National Green Tribunal, and NGT has also taken a have given stern remarks on the Uttar Pradesh state government, that why the government failed to keep the water in its pure sense, why it failed to have a proper sewage treatment plant, and it made the people to dip into that water. A lot of incidents of diseases have also come up. Okay, so the thing is that what do we understand by this bacteria? This is our discussion. Okay, not the river pollution. So we are not taking up that particular topic. Here we are going to discuss the key facts related to this particular form of bacteria. Okay, so again, just a factual information. So coliform basically is a group of bacteria commonly found in the intestines of the warm-blooded animals, as well as it is also found in the humans, warm-blooded animals, right? They are present in the human as well as animal waste. So whenever there will be a sewage discharge into the river, in that particular point of that river, the presence of the Faecel coliform bacteria will increase, and the presence of this particular coliform bacteria in the water body suggests to you that this water is experiencing a lot of sewage, animal or the human waste. Okay, so the presence suggests that the water may also contain harmful pathogens such as viruses, parasites, or other bacteria like Salmonella bacteria, E. coli bacteria that originates from the fecal matter, right? So obviously there are huge health risks. A lot of people have experienced typhoid over there. So infections of mouth, nose, ears, stomach, intestine have been experienced. Nausea, gastrointestinal infections, vomiting, diarrhea, skin rashes, eye irritation, serious conditions like typhoid, hepatitis A, respiratory issues due to inhaling water droplets containing bacteria, all are the health issues related to the E. coliform bacteria or the Faecel coliform bacteria. Okay, so from the examination's perspective, especially the prelims part, we need to be aware that what are the E. coli bacteria or the Faecel coliform bacteria, what is its source, and what are its detrimental health impacts, right? So this was a pretty brief topic, just a factual part. Moving to the next topic. This topic is in relation to the cheetahs because recently a new study by the Center for Wildlife Studies has suggested that the cheetah reintroduction project, we are we aware about the reintroduction project? Basically, in India, there was a widespread presence of cheetahs at one point of time, but now cheetahs were extinct from India. Cheetahs are a top predator, they are a keystone species. Keystone species basically mean those species which are very important for a healthy ecosystem to survive. If you are having a keystone species in a particular ecosystem, it is one of the indicators that your ecosystem is functioning properly because you have the top predator. Now, having said that, it is not always essential that only the top predator will be a keystone species. It is not like that. Okay. In this case, cheetah is a top predator as well as a keystone species. Because cheetahs got extinct in India, so that is why the policymakers believed that why not we import cheetahs, because cheetahs were there in India at one point of time. That means India is a natural habitat for cheetahs. Somehow it got extinct. So why not to import cheetah from Africa? And because they are a keystone species, and if we are able to successfully reintroduce them in India, so it will take care of the ecosystem as a whole. So intent was good, but when it comes to the implementation, there are challenges. As well as intent, only intent cannot matter. So we need to take the all the merits and demerits of this particular project. Okay. So that is why it was believed. This study came and it said that it is not ecologically viable as well as ethical also to reintroduce the cheetahs. Fine. Why? Because recently a lot of casualties have been experienced. The cheetah mortality rate have been high in India for those cheetahs who have been imported from Africa. From Africa, we are importing cheetahs from two countries. One is Namibia and one is South Africa. Okay. We are importing the cheetahs from these countries to India, and the most important protected area where these cheetahs are going to be relocated is a Kuno Palpur National Park, right? So this is an important sanctuary, important national park. In this relation, we have to see some of the key facts related to cheetah as well as leopards. First of all, look at the picture. So there are certain differences between cheetahs and the leopards. You see the picture of the face of cheetah and leopard. In cheetahs, you will see that there is a black line which is coming from eye and it is moving like this. Okay, so there is a black line in cheetahs which is not found in the leopards. So this is one factor, on the one parameter on which you will be able to differentiate that whether this is a cheetah or a leopard. Okay, one. Second thing is, when you see the patches, see this figure, these two figures. So when you see the patches on the body of cheetah, so here you can see that they have solid round or oval spot shape, black color, solid round or oval shaped spots are there. As soon as you move into the leopards, here you have large patches. Leopard has rosettes. Just a minute. Just a minute. Yeah. So here leopards have rosettes which are rose-like markings. There is another similar species which is known by the name jaguars. When we talk about jaguars, so these jaguars also have rosettes like leopards, but the size of the rosettes in the jaguars are little bit larger compared to the leopards, right? But here we are differentiating cheetahs and leopards. Also, cheetahs are taller than the leopards, but leopards are bulkier than cheetahs. So leopards have more power, which allow the leopards to take their prey on the trees. So leopards can climb the trees, taking prey with them. So these leopards have more power. Cheetahs have more speed. Okay, cheetahs can run more than 100 kilometers per hour, but leopards generally run at 50 to 60 kilometers per hour speed. Okay, so these are the differences. Looking at the body, you can tell that whether this is a leopard or a cheetah. Fine. Coming to this aspect. So we all know that these are the large cat species. They are carnivores, and cheetahs are the world's fastest land animal. They are the keystone species, which we have discussed. They have a very slender body, which basically help them to run so fast. Okay, they have very long legs. They also have a long tail. Okay, so cheetahs have very long tail, leopards have shorter tail, and jaguars have the shortest tail. So they have long tail, they have small round head and distinctive black spots, which we have seen. They are found in diverse habitats, but mostly they are found in the scrubs forest, not very dense forest. Because if the forest is very dense, so cheetahs will not find the space to run because they are running so fast. So they require a huge extensive land which are not having very dense presence of trees, right? So they will be generally found in the grasslands areas or in the rare forest, that is scrub forest, dry grasslands, savannas, arid and semi-arid, open habitats have to be there. In 1952, cheetahs were declared extinct from India, as we have discussed. IUCN status is vulnerable. They are listed in Appendix 1 of the CITES, Schedule 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Another important prelims fact is that there is a Cheetah Conservation Fund, which was established in 1990. Cheetah Conservation Fund. It is an international, it is not national, it is an international non-profit organization headed in Namibia, right? So these are important facts about the cheetahs. These are the important differences between cheetahs and leopards in relation to the body shape, in relation to the patterns on the body, in relation to the different patterns on the face, in context of the size, in context of the speed. Okay, this is the thing. Moving towards next topic. This topic will be dealt from the mains perspective. And as we have discussed that it finds its relevance in General Studies paper 1 in the changing geophysical phenomena. Now we all know that because of the climate change, the sea ice is melting and sea level is rising. When we talk about the sea ice, so obviously we have to talk about the Arctic as well as Antarctica region, because these are the two prominent areas. The third pole is the Himalayan part, but it is not a sea ice, right? So when we have to talk about the two poles, that is North Pole and South Pole, both the poles are experiencing the extreme loss of ice cover over the surface. Okay, so and this has various negative implications, not just on ecology or environment. It also has a large scale implications on economy. It also has a large scale implications on the society and culture of the people. Okay, so we shall be discussing about the key facts related to the loss of sea ice cover. First of all, we shall examine that what is the extent of the issue. According to the reports, they say that every year since 1970s, every year there is around 80,000 square kilometer of the ice which is lost. Every year, 80,000 square kilometer of ice. If we have to talk only about Antarctica, in 2014 to 17, it lost around 2 million square kilometer of the sea ice. This basically tells you the rapid loss of sea ice from this particular region. This graph basically tells you that in 1880, that is the sea level, global sea level was more than 18 centimeter below 1993 to 2008 average. So let's say if we take the average sea level in this period, that is 1993 to 2008, this is the average. If we take this average sea level, so in 1880 it was around minus 15 minus 20 centimeter below this level, and now we have around plus 5 to plus 7 centimeter, that is above this 93 to 2008 average. So that means if we compare present times with this particular time, so it is around 25 to 30 centimeter of the sea level has risen, That is why it's written that in 2020, the global sea level was nearly 7 centimeter above this particular level. In 1880, it was around 18 centimeter below this particular level. So if you add this 20 plus 5 or 7, so you get 25 to 27 centimeter rise of the sea level in the period 1880 to 2020. Right? This is again a data of fact which you can quote in your answer, showing you the extent of the loss of ice cover as well as the rise in sea level. These two graphs show you that the extent of the sea ice in both Arctic as well as Antarctic have gone down. So the extent is reducing in both the poles, right? When we see this image, it tells you basically a difference between the Arctic sea ice as well as the Antarctic sea ice. In both areas you are having sea ice, but there is some differences. When we talk about the Arctic sea ice, so in Arctic you have permanent ice cover, but as you move in Antarctic there are seasonal ice variations. You will have dynamic seasonal changes in the Antarctic area, but in the Arctic area you have a permanent ice cover. So it has experienced long-term decline, but here you have extreme fluctuations in Antarctic. In Arctic, there is a long-term decline. In Arctic, the sea ice cover is thicker also, and you have persistent ice. But here we have seen that dynamic seasonal changes are there, right? So this basically tells you the comparison between the Arctic sea ice as well as Antarctic sea ice. One is relatively more permanent, one is seasonal, having fluctuations. One is thicker, one is thinner, one is persistent ice, right? When we talk about the role of ice in maintaining a climate, it primarily has two important roles. We all must have read about the heat budget. Heat budget basically tells you, it gives you the data regarding the incoming shortwave solar radiations and the outgoing terrestrial long wave radiations. We all know that the net is always zero. Whatever insolation has come to the Earth's surface, it has to go back. How will it go back? That's a different thing. There might be direct reflections, there might be scattering, there might be conversion of solar into terrestrial radiations, there might be entrapment of the heat. That's a different thing. But all the incoming radiation has to be balanced by the outgoing radiation, because if that is not the case, if incoming is more, then the earth will boil up eventually. If outgoing is more, then the earth will freeze eventually. So in order to have a habitable climatic conditions on the earth, the net heat budget has to be zero, right? Ice has a very important role in maintaining the heat budget, because white ice encourages the reflections. So there are albedos. If you are destroying the ice, so that means you are altering the reflection rates, you are altering the albedo rates. If the reflection is disturbed, so that means heat budget will be disturbed. So it has an important role in albedo and the heat budget. Second thing is, it also has an important role when it comes to the ocean chemistry. It prevents ocean acidification. Presence of higher sea ice basically will lower down the sea surface temperature. See, if sea surface temperature is getting lowered, that means because the subsurface sea temperature is also lower, and if the surface temperature is also lower, so that means the thermal compatibility will be ensured. That means the densities will be more similar of the surface as well as subsurface water. If the density of the surface and subsurface water are similar or in close to each other, then there might be better intermixing, because liquids having different densities will not intermix, right? And if there is better intermixing of the surface and the subsurface water, then obviously nutrient cycling will be ensured, energy redistribution will be ensured, upwelling cold currents bring nutrients, there will be growth of phytoplanktons, fisheries, biodiversity, and all those things. But if there is a loss of sea ice, that means the surface temperature of the oceans are increasing. That means the density of the surface water is decreasing, but the density of the subsurface water is always higher. So what will happen? Because of this density differences, there will be different layers. There will not be intermixing of the water, and hence when different layers will be formed and there will not be intermixing, it might lead to ocean acidification. There will be higher absorption of carbon dioxide, leading to the acidification of the water body. Are you getting it? So these are the two important roles of the ice in maintaining the global climate. But now, because we are discussing about this melt of the sea ice cover, so we should understand what are the reasons behind this particular dip. The first important reason is the subsurface warming of the southern oceans. It has been witnessed that the subsurface waters, especially in the southern oceans, are getting warmed up. And because of this persistent warming, the Antarctica region is facing the loss in the sea ice cover. Right? Why this is happening? Because of the climate change, because of the global warming. Southern hemisphere relatively have been remained undisturbed for centuries because all the land, majorly all the land is in the northern hemisphere. Southern hemisphere have been remain undisturbed, and that is why it was relatively colder also compared to the northern parts. But in recent times, because of global warming, the abrupt changes have been experienced in the southern parts, and therefore this explains the faster warming up of the subsurface water in southern ocean. Second is changes in the wind pattern. Because of the climate change and alteration of the thermal and the pressure conditions, it has been again witnessed that wind patterns and directions are changing. Now what is happening, that the wind is pushing the warmer water towards the polar areas. So if the winds are pushing warmer water towards polar areas, that means again you are introducing heat into the cold areas and it is going to melt the ice, right? The next reason is increase in the ocean heat because of the larger absorption, because of the anthropogenic activities, all the greenhouse gases which have been emitted in the atmosphere. We all know that oceans are this carbon pool. The carbon sequestration takes place. So the carbon dioxide or the greenhouse gases which are released in atmosphere, they will be absorbed back by the oceans. If they are absorbed back by the oceans, so obviously the temperature has to increase, and when the temperature will increase, obviously there will be melting of the sea ice cover, right? So these are the reasons behind the recent dip of the sea ice cover. Now if we have to talk about the implications, first is disturbed heat budget. We have discussed it, because there will be alteration in the albedo rates, so obviously heat budget might be disturbed. Second is increased global warming. So when the sea ice when the ice melts, this melting releases lot of greenhouse gases. So because of the greenhouse gases, this ice was melting, and because of the melting of this ice, further new greenhouse gases are being released, which again will increase the global temperature, which again will increase the sea melting, ice melting, and when the ice melting will take place, further more greenhouse gases will be released. So it becomes a positive feedback loop system, right? So this is increased global warming because of the loss of sea ice cover. Next is disturbed biodiversity, obviously. So what will happen to the species which are surviving in these polar areas? Think about the polar bears, think about the penguins. Not just the polar areas, but the aquatic, the marine life in the close vicinity will also get disturbed. The ocean biodiversity will also get disturbed, because when the sea ice will melt, it is going to directly impact the ocean biodiversity. The thermal characteristics are going to change, the chemistry of the ocean will change. So it is going to disturb the biodiversity. Next, we have rise in weather extremities. Think about the tropical cyclones. Tropical cyclones require warm water. They require warm water, huge amount of moisture has to be there. So during the warming phase, so obviously the weather extremities can increase. It will alter the rainfall pattern, monsoon pattern. Recently, we are seeing that rainfall extremities are rising. The intensity of the rainfall is rising. This further can lead to flooding, which further can lead to this rainfall extremity can also lead to cloudbursts, landslides. Are you getting it? So rise in weather extremities will be a direct outcome of this. Think about coastal flooding. So coastal flooding is going to be there if the sea level is rising. So obviously the coastal areas will be submerged. That is why countries like Seychelles are under deep stress, right? Then ocean acidification, this also we have discussed. So when there will be increase in the sea surface temperature, which we have discussed, there will be change in density. That means the top layer of the water will be having different characteristic. The bottom layer of the water will be having different characteristic. There will be difference in densities. There will not be proper intermixing. So ocean acidification will take place. Impacts on the ocean currents. Recently, few reports have suggested that because of this climate change, global warming, and the increase in the global average temperature of the oceans, the ocean currents are reducing their speed. And this study was conducted with reference to the Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic Drift, and it was seen that the speed of the Gulf Stream has been reduced. So, if there are alterations in the ocean currents, then obviously there will be alterations in the impact of the oceans. Because, for example, we know that Gulf Stream is known to bring moderating impact on the northwestern part of Europe. So now if the Gulf Stream is getting slowed down, if there are changes in the Gulf Stream, that means the moderating impact on the northwestern Europe will also get compromised. So that means weather extremities in the northwestern Europe might increase. That is one of the reasons that why now we are having heat waves in the European region, right? So all these are the implications of this loss of the sea ice cover, and the causes, the reasons behind it. We have also discussed the basic difference between the Antarctic and the Arctic sea ice, and we have discussed the extent of the problem with help of this data and some graphs, right? This topic will help you in the mains examination to write the answer. UPSC already has asked question in relation to the melting of the cryosphere, because it explicitly writes it in the syllabus, right? So that was all from my side for today. So I hope you have enjoyed this session. If yes, just let us know, like the video. Thank you very much. All the very best.